turn, if you would, please, with me today to Hebrews chapter 11. Kind of frames thoughts for today. Hebrews chapter 11. For those of you who may know or have heard in the past that Hebrews chapter 11 is called the faith chapter, because it begins by talking about what faith is like. If you notice, it says, for example, in Hebrews 11 chapter 1, chapter 11 verse 1, it says, now faith is, look at the word, some translation says is the substance of. The NIV says that it is confidence in. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for. It's the desires of your heart, the things that you be longing for. And an assurance, don't miss that, an assurance of what we do not see. I wrote earlier this week and threw it out a post on Facebook from the devotional I'm going through. I've got a couple I'm doing now. As I was shared with you all, back in New Year's Eve about turning your heart back towards what matters most. And so I have got several devotions that I'm currently using now that I go through daily, and it's just to be grounded, right? To be reminded of the truths of God. And you say, well, Pastor, you mean you didn't have a devotion to do daily? No, I did not. No, I did not. I have let the priorities, the false priorities of this world, like vines will tangle around you, get tangled around my life. Wasn't doing anything wrong, but I had allowed myself to drift away for what mattered most. And so one of the things that Max Lucado wrote in one of the ones I was looking at this week says, turn a deaf ear to doubters. Ignore the naysayers. You know something? People do have a right to say what they want. But you also have a right to ignore them. Because when you start recognizing what it means to want to try to live by faith and trust God and not doubt Him, you will find that you will be introduced to the naysayers. There will be more people who will tell you why that might not happen than those that will encourage you to trust God that it will. And so that's why the writer of Hebrews says that now faith is to be confident in what we hope for and be assured of what you do not see, because you're trusting in God. Listen, by faith, he talks about this. By faith, we understand some things. We understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. By faith, Abel thought, it says here, brought God a better sacrifice than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as righteous when God spoke well of his offering. By faith, we also see here, it says, Abel still speaks. By faith, Enoch. Remember we talked about Enoch one day? Enoch was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. He walked, they say, one day Enoch walked so far with God that God said, you know, you're so close to my house, why don't you come on in? Wouldn't you want to walk with God that way? And he says as a result of that, he was not taken away. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as being one who pleased God. And here it is. And listen to this, verse 6. And without faith, don't miss this. And without faith, as the old preacher would say, tell your neighbor. And without faith, it's impossible to please God. Don't ever forget that. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. Listen, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists, that's the beginning, and that he rewards those who earnestly seek after him. You see, we listen to the naysayers when we find ourselves doubting God. And we tend to doubt when here's the thing that's interesting. We tend to doubt God when it matters most, that we would trust him. Why is it that we can trust God in the things that we really can do on our own? But yet we doubt God when we're confronted with something that, apart from him, we can't do anything about at all. But we do that. We trust God with the easy things. We doubt him when he matters most to be the one to do what we cannot do on our own. And that's because we allow secular reasoning to become the core of how we view life. We allow the way we see things being worked out and the way man would say things should be done to become the core for how we want to frame our reference, that things will come to pass in a positive way. And that will always, it's like grains of sand that will slip through your hands. The Bible says very clearly here that without faith it's impossible to please God. There are several bridges I wrote down about today. You think about a bridge, right? A bridge has a purpose of separating two land masses. And that bridge is either going to cross some vast body of water, typically, or it might cross over this great chasm, right? It could be a Grand Canyon or something. But that bridge has a purpose, doesn't it? It has a purpose of connecting 2 points, where you are versus where you want to go. And you have this bridge that is that connector. I wrote down a couple. The Brooklyn Bridge in New York, magnificent. The Golden Gate Bridge in California, it's an awesome sight. You ever seen it or been on it? The Sunshine Skyway Bridge at Tampa, Florida, very beautiful. Also, there's the Royal Gorge Bridge, Colorado. And you can laugh at me, but I'm weird. And you may say, well, we know that, Pastor. Tell us something we don't know. But I am. Because whenever I cross a bridge, I have this weird way of looking at all of the, I don't know, the name of the ball, quite frankly. So I find myself looking at the steel cables, really? Looking at the bolts. I'm looking at this as I'm riding along. But I cross it. Not once, and I never really thought about it. Not once have I said, honey, chillins, before we cross this bridge, I'm going to pull over because I need to go and I want to inspect all these bolts and cables. I just want to make sure it's all sturdy here before we cross. So I've never done that. I've looked and hoped that the cables were going to hold, but I never let that keep me from crossing. Faith is like a bridge. Because you have to decide if you're going to trust God that he will see you from one point to another. And it's okay to question. It's okay to look at the cables and wonder if God's strong enough. He doesn't mind that. It's okay to look at the boats to make sure God's tight enough to do this. That's okay. But cross. Because faith says, I choose to cross over. I choose to trust God. In the midst of my uncertainties, that he will see me safely through this. What bridge does God have you wanting to cross today? Where are you right now, just to the point of getting on the bridge, but you're frozen? You just can't make the next step. Because you know there's also other kinds of bridges that I've seen on mainly Amazon Prime kind of movies and stuff like that. It's the bridge that has these ropes on it, right? And it's got these wooden slats, and some of the slats are missing, and as soon as you step on it, it starts rocking back and forth, you know. And sometimes when you step on the bridge, it starts swaying a little bit. Because the enemy does not want you to cross. So he'll rock your faith to see if you are bold enough to trust God enough to cross over anyway. Faith is a bridge. And so I ask you today, what bridge have you stopped at and been afraid to cross over? God's waiting on you to make a move. The bridge is stable. You just have to choose to trust Him and cross over. And maybe you can't stand to look down because it makes you nauseous. Maybe you can't stand, maybe you just have to kind of keep your eyes fixed on trying to get to the other side. That's okay. Just cross over. Choose to trust Him. That's what faith is all about. Choose to trust Him. There was a man I wrote about, that I didn't write about, I read about also in Matthew. Matthew 17, there's a turn there, but it kind of gives us context here. In Matthew chapter 17, you find this man who had a son. And the son was sick, very sick. The son had all sorts of issues. Some writers say he may have had epilepsy, or he had issues but would throw him into fits. And nobody could heal him. He'd gone to all the folks that were the people that could provide support, and he'd heard about Jesus. And he heard that Jesus had given his disciples the authority to also be the ones that could be the healers of this man's son. So the man takes the son to the disciples, and they are able to heal him. And so then the man decides, I'm going to go to Jesus because he said that they could heal my son, and my son is still sick. And so the story Matthew writes says that, so when the man went to Jesus, he said, will you help me with the situation of my son? And Jesus told him, oh, you of little faith. And his disciples are like, we are doing what you told us to do. He goes on to say, but some things take prayer. And Jesus did heal his son. But Mark chapter 9 gives a different story of that. Because in Mark chapter 9, what Mark captured about the same situation was where Jesus asked the man, do you believe that I can do this? And that father was a lot like me and you. The father said, yes, I believe, but in the same breath he said, help me in my unbelief. Yes, I believe, but yet help me in my unbelief. And Jesus did both. He helped him in his unbelief, and his son was healed. But then he also began to talk about this interesting concept of a mustard seed. And he said, if you would have the faith of a mustard seed, you would say to this mountain, move. And the mountain will be moved. Now, for those of you who may or may not know, a mustard seed is really one of the smallest seeds. It's like a speck. If you have children, you ought to get a mustard seed and drop it in the palm of their hand and see how little that mustard seed is. And then show them the plant that comes from that seed. It's a big plant. But it's not the seed for those of us who know science in this room that creates the plant. It's the life inside the seed that brings forth the plant that grows. And many of us, no, I say us, have allowed the world to create us or change us into empty shells. We are the mustard seed shell, but we have allowed the life of faith to die in us. So therefore now that seed brings forth nothing. Because we've allowed the cares of the world, the perspectives and the ideology of the way world sees challenges, to rob us of the very core of that faith that is possible to please God and to trust Him even in the midst of the shaky bridge, even when the report is not coming back the way we want, to choose, hear me, the life, to live out what we say we believe. No matter what comes against us. A living faith. That in spite of, I will trust Him. In spite of, I will hold on to Him. In spite of, I will live a life worthy of the calling. In spite of, after I've done everything to stand, I'll keep on standing. Although you slay me, yet still will I trust you kind of faith. Because that's the seed that'll break through. See growth. I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of being an empty shell. Look like, but don't act like. He lives. Talk like, but don't walk like. He lives. He's not the I was. He's the I am. And He's still moving and living and doing exceedingly and abundantly more than you ever hoped, dream, or imagine, but you have to choose to trust Him. Amen. You have to choose that if any man lacks wisdom, that he or she will ask God, who will liberally give them wisdom and not hold anything against them. Oh, but when you ask, don't doubt.
Yes, yes.
Choose to trust Him. Doesn't matter what anyone else says. Choose to walk by faith, not by sight.
That's right.
I dare you to truly trust God. Because I guarantee you one thing, He'll show out.
Amen.
Because He will show you His glory. And when He shows you His glory, nothing else can compare.
Amen.
And your life will be changed.
Well.
And your light will shine.
That's right.
And you'll have a testimony that'll be bold. And you won't be afraid to say, my Redeemer lives, because you will see Him living in your life.
Amen. Yeah, yeah.
And not only will you no longer be afraid to cross the bridge of faith, you'll be the one that takes others' hands. Come on, you can take it. I've been over this bridge one time before, and I can take it now. It's a little rocky, it's a little scary, but you will make it to the other side. Just put one foot in front of the other, take one step day by day, and choose to trust Him, and you will make it to the other side. I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of just being all lethargical, right? Just afraid to say, not to trust God, worried about what somebody might say, or what they might say, or how they may never tell you something. If you don't trust God, you are dead walking. I have seen it. I'm telling you. Yeah, my wife and I watched a movie one day. Yeah, we watched a lot of movies. And whenever somebody's going to death row, the guy would walk out in front. Dead man walking. Dead man walking. In other words, his sentence was already made. You know what people say about me? Living man walking. Living man walking. Because he's choosing to trust God with every step he makes. Do I have it all figured out? No. Do I know what tomorrow's going to hold? No. I don't know nobody next second. But I tell you one thing I know, that if God says yes, it will be yes. And His them. And you know what I better do? One thing. Say one thing. One thing.
Yes, sir.
Choose to trust him.
Yes. Thank you, Lord.
Choose to trust him. Choose to trust him.
Yes, Lord.
Choose to trust him. I close with the story. In Numbers chapter 13, it was time for the people to enter to the promised land of Canaan. And so Moses said, take 12 men, one from each tribe, and send them over to spy out the land. Check the boats, check the cables. Of this land that God has promised us flows with milk and honey. Go check it out. So Moses finds these 12 men. It's interesting that of the 12, only two's name is remembered. Caleb and Joshua. I don't even remember the other 12 guys' names. And I submit to you, you won't find many people who do know the 12 guys' names, but everybody knows the two. So they send them over, and they're there for 40 days. And they come back with the reports. And so Moses says, well, what did you see? How was it? They come back, and here's what's crazy. They come back, and one of the places they had gone was actually known, it translates into the Valley of Cluster, bounty, plenty. And so they come back with these pomegranates and all this fruit. It was so much of the 2 men to carry it. I can almost see them with the poles on their shoulders, and it's kind of bowed down from the weight. And they're coming back, bringing back with them the things that came from this land, showing the bounty, the plenty. And so Moses said, well, what did you see? And they took this big load and they dropped it down. Moses, we got a bad report. There are giants in the land. You remember Goliath? His mom and daddy are over there. There's a whole bunch of bad boys over there. The walls were so tall, we couldn't even see the top of them. It's just, we were like grasshoppers in their sight. It was Moses, I don't know about this. That's 10 of the 12. It's a bad place. It's not a good place to go. But Joshua and Caleb said, it's everything God promised us. What was interesting is the 10 saw the obstacles and did not see the promise. But the 2 saw the promise and chose to ignore the obstacles. In your life, you will have obstacles. But there will also be, in those circumstances, God's promises. You have to choose if you will focus on the obstacles or the promise. They both exist. But you won't get there unless you choose to go. The bottom line is the 10 sowed discord. And that, did you know this? Did you see, if you read, did you know that that was the actual reason why the Israelites stayed in the wilderness for 40 years? Because they would not cross the bridge. They went in a circle for 40 years. Here's the sad part. Until that generation died off. Because they refused to change. And so they never had the opportunity to cross over. Caleb at that time, with Joshua, was about 45 years old. So now, 40 years later, that generation dies off. It's time to enter the promised land. Caleb's now 85, wearing bifocals, lost his hair, probably on a cane, a little cripped up, still got faith, they cross over the promised land. The first thing Caleb asked for was Hebron. Hebron was the land in the Canaan area that they had walked into. Oh, by the way, it's where those descendants of Amalek were, where the giants were. Why do you want to go there? Because it was in Hebron where Abraham, Isaac, his wife, and all of them had been buried. And that land had been taken over by these ungodly tribes. So he knew that was a place that was sacred to God. And this old man now, although he was in the promised land, he chose now to take the obstacles that he saw 40 years ago head on. And the Bible says that the tribe who was with him ran those ungodly out, and they took over that land for God. You see, he didn't want his promise just to be something that fulfills his own life. He wanted the promise fulfilled that faced the obstacles he saw to give God more glory. But it did not happen until they crossed over. The reason you are afraid to cross over the bridge of faith in your life is not because you may not necessarily trust God, but Satan knows that if you cross over and you make it to the other side, you're going to be dangerous. Because you're going to be so bold now, and your life is going to change so much that you're going to make a difference in other people's lives. And you're going to give God glory in the way you conduct yourself. That you're going to be like those disciples where they said, look out, because here come those dudes that turn the world upside down. Because you won't be able to help yourself but to declare the glory of God. There's an app. I've played around with it, but I haven't used it much. It's called Let Go. And the thoughts are, what kind of junk you got all around? But you know, you just need to let it go. I'm sorry. Okay, so you don't want to throw it away. You got to just let it go. It's hindering you. It's keeping you from moving forward. It's this clutter. It's not just, you got to let it go. You know what? We might need to find there might be some areas in life you just need to let it go. You've listened to too many lies. You've heard too many stories about other people's failures where they didn't trust God and they said to you it's fact, and so now you're holding on to this why you don't know what to do in your life. You just need to let doubt go. You need to let your trying to figure everything out go. And you need to choose to trust God. Believe in your heart and not doubt. In all your ways, acknowledge me. And I'll make your path straight. What is it today that you need to let go of that's hindering you from choosing to cross the bridge of faith and trust God that He will take you to the other side and give you an opportunity to give Him glory? Turn a deaf ear to darkness. Ignore the naysayers. People have the right to say what they want, but you have the right to ignore them. Be the 2, not the 10. And you'll see God do exceedingly and abundantly more than you could ever hope, dream, or imagine as you choose to trust Him.